Hey, what's up YouTube? Today we're going to be doing a review of the 90mm f2.8 macro lens from Sony. My name is Mark Bergering. I'm a professional photographer alongside my wife Brenda, and we shoot a lot of adventure and outdoor inspired work. On this YouTube channel you'll find photography advice, gear reviews and tutorials, and inspiration around creativity and adventure. If you're interested in that type of stuff, hit the subscribe and we'd love to share more content with you. Let's get into the details about why I'm reviewing a macro lens. So initially, when I was asked to review this lens, I was pretty skeptical. I wasn't sure why I would want to use a macro lens and what the benefits would be, but after using it, I'm super excited about it and I had a lot of fun with it. I'd never really used a macro lens before, but after playing with this, I really enjoyed being able to get a super close perspective on subjects. And then I also realized that it's just a great all-around focal length. 90mm is pretty close to 85mm, which is my favorite focal length for shooting portraits. So this lens doubles as a great portrait lens in addition to being able to get super close up on subjects. So to start off, let's talk about build quality and just the overall features on this lens. When I first picked it up, it's a G lens, which is one grade below the G Master lenses, which is Sony's top-of-the-line lenses intended for the A7R line of cameras. And the G lenses are just one step below that, which is super high quality, but just not quite up to that super high resolution sensor size. But I did find that on the A7R III, this lens produced super sharp results and it was a great, provided great quality. But along with that G rating, you also get usually like a full metal build quality, and you get some features like this multifunction button on the side, which people often program to things like eye autofocus, or there's a whole list of features that you can set it to. Additionally, on the side you have the optical steady shot switch, which allows you to turn on and off the optical stabilization, which is really nice if you're shooting close up. You might want that stabilization to keep things sharp, even if you're shooting at lower shutter speeds. There's also a switch here for the focus range, so you can set it to full or you can set a partial focus range. I usually just leave it on full, but some people will accidentally flip this switch and be confused why their lens won't focus. So if you're having focusing issues, check that this is set to the full range so that you can get focus wherever your subject is. At the top of the lens here, you'll notice there's a indication of focus distance and zoom factor. So in blue is the zoom factor, or how large your subject is appearing. And then in orange is the distance, the minimum focus distance in feet, and white in meters. The other cool thing about this focus ring is that it has hard stops. So when you flip it into manual focus, you can rotate it and it stops there, and it stops on the close end. Some of the lenses from Sony, you'll notice the focus by wire system. So this lens, or this focus ring, will constantly rotate and it's kind of hard to tell where you are. So with a macro lens, it's handy, since you'll be dialing that focus really accurately, to be able to tell what distance you're at and have a hard stop so that you know exactly where that distance is. The other cool feature for manual and autofocus switch is you just slide this little focus ring up and down. So focus it, or select it up for autofocus, down for manual focus. And I just found that was really easy. You never have to worry about finding the switch with your thumb and flipping it. It's just always right there, which is helpful if you're shooting super close up and you want to just quickly tweak in manual focus. This lens is relatively large and it's not super heavy, but it's not super lightweight. I found that it was equivalent to maybe a 16-35 in length, the 16-35 f2.8, and it feels pretty well balanced. It's not excessively heavy for the focal length that it offers. Generally, this lens felt really durable, and I was excited with the build quality. It feels mostly metal and just generally a tough design. When it came to the autofocus, I found that this lens was pretty accurate and quick to achieve focus. I liked how it is easy to flip it to manual focus. If you do want to use that minimum focus distance, you can go right to it. I appreciated that feature. But most of the time I just used it in autofocus and got close to the subject, and it worked really well. When you're looking for a macro lens, The ideal thing to achieve is that 1-to-1 representation of your subject, and you can see that at the minimum focus distance of 0.92 feet, it has that 1-to-1 ratio. So that just means that you're going to get the largest possible view of that subject through the lens. If you have a shorter focal length, like say a 40mm macro, that means that you're going to have to get a lot closer to your subject in order to get that ratio of 1-to-1. Whereas with a 90mm lens, you're going to be able to be a little bit further away. The advantage to being further away is if you're shooting subjects that don't want to be disturbed. Let's say you're shooting some kind of bug or something that is potentially going to move away from you. It's nice to have a little bit longer focal range. A couple things on this lens that I think could be improved. It would be nice if it was weather sealed. There's no O-ring here on the edge where it mounts. That would be nice to have that. Secondly, it'd be nice if this lens was a little bit faster. So primarily for portraits, I'll use my 85mm f1.8, which is a really nice lens. But the 90mm macro only has a minimum aperture of f2.8, which is about a stop and a half slower than the 1.8 aperture on the 85mm. So if this lens could be, let's say, an f2, I think I would definitely get rid of the 85 and use this for portraits as well as any macro work that I had. The other thing that would be nice is if the focus motor was completely silent. I noticed when shooting some video that it makes just a little bit of noise. It's pretty minimal, but you can hear it. And when you're shooting something that's really quiet and you want to have that clean audio, you may hear the focus motor. However, I think it was much quieter than other macro lens reviews that I've read that have noisy motors and an extending barrel. Another little tip that I have for you is that if you're shooting any product photos, like I was shooting some photos of this watch, you might want to consider using a polarizer to cut the glare. A lot of people So one tip I have for you, if you are going to be shooting some macro product shots or close-ups on really anything, I would strongly suggest using a polarizing filter because it really helps to cut down on that glare. I noticed when I was shooting some images of this watch, having that polarizing filter was super helpful to just get a clean, less reflective looking image. And it can be especially helpful if you're shooting in a bunch of different environments, but I think with macro photography, it really cuts down and improves your image quality. So overall, I think the 90mm f2.8 macro lens from Sony is an awesome lens, and it was super fun to just try something new and get a new perspective. I think it could be a really good fit in a lot of photographers' bags, especially if you're going to shoot small products like watches. And it's also a great portrait lens as long as you're not shooting in super low light. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have any questions for me about this lens, feel free to hit me up in the comments. Also, I'm going to put some sample images after this so you can just look through some of the images I took. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.